The story begins in 1940 in Italy when the country enters the Second World War. Here, we meet a 12-year-old boy named Renato. Renato's father takes him to buy a bicycle. After getting the bicycle, Renato sets out to explore the town and later meets his friends. His friends are thrilled to see his new bicycle. Just then, one of his friends says, "She's coming. Everyone sit down." All the boys quickly sit down, but Renato doesn't understand who is coming. At that moment, the most beautiful woman in town, Malena, walks past them. Renato is so mesmerized by Malena that it seems he is instantly drawn to her. He keeps staring at her, unable to take his eyes off her. After this, Renato, along with his friends, starts following Malena on his bicycle. Malena's father lives alone. He is a school teacher and is hard of hearing. Renato also studies at the same school. Malena is married, but her husband is mostly away as he serves in the army. Malena is so beautiful that all the men in the town desire her and long to catch even a glimpse of her. However, the women in the town envy her and aspire to be as beautiful as her. We then see Renato at school, where he keeps thinking about Malena, unable to focus on his studies. After school, Renato rides his bicycle to Malena's house and waits across the street for her to come out. After some time, Malena steps outside and calls Renato over, giving him money to buy cigarettes. Renato keeps staring at her intently. Suddenly, he snaps out of his imagination and realizes he is still sitting in the same place. Later, Renato goes home and steals his father's pants, taking them to a tailor to have them altered for himself. However, when his father finds out, he scolds Renato severely and says, "You're still at the age for wearing shorts." Renato knows that Malena is married, yet he continues to watch her closely. At night, he secretly climbs a tree to peek through the window into Malena's room. Day and night, he keeps following her. One night, Renato secretly observes Malena dancing to music in her room. He watches her intently, but Malena has no idea someone is spying on her. The next day, Renato buys a cassette from a music shop and listens to the same song that Malena was playing the night before. In his imagination, Malena starts appearing in his room. Seeing this in his mind, Renato feels overjoyed, but it is all just his fantasy. The next day, Renato once again follows Malena on his bicycle, but he notices that from wealthy individuals to the poor, and even high-ranking officials, everyone secretly watches Malena and looks at her with a degrading gaze. Seeing this, their wives, instead of confronting their husbands, mock and despise Malena because they don't want their husbands to focus on another woman. Malena ignores everyone's comments and remains silent. She is deeply loyal to her husband. Malena then visits a house where her father lives alone. She goes there every day because her father is elderly, unwell, and undergoing treatment. Malena takes care of him. Renato follows her on his bicycle and secretly observes everything. The next day, we see some army officers and government officials making an announcement over a microphone in the town that some people have died in the war, including Malena's husband. Upon hearing this, the townspeople become happy because Malena is now a widow. However, Malena is devastated by the news of her husband's death. She loved him dearly, and after his death, she becomes completely alone. She then leaves her own house and moves to her father's home. Renato stands outside Malena's house and watches her crying inside. A few days later, while Malena is drying her clothes, Renato secretly steals one of her undergarments and runs away. At night, holding the undergarment in his hands, he becomes lost in thoughts of Malena. The next morning, when Renato's father sees this with him, he scolds him harshly. His mother beats him, and his father locks him in a room. For 3 days, Renato remains confined, refusing to eat or drink, which causes his health to deteriorate. His parents then call a doctor who examines him and advises that Renato needs to eat on time and spend time outdoors in the fresh air. Afterward, Renato goes out on his bicycle. He sees that the women in the town are spreading rumors against Malena, accusing her of being involved with other men. Even some men speak ill of her, but Renato knows that these accusations are untrue. The next day, while Malena's father is teaching at school, he receives a letter. The letter states, "Your daughter is not a virtuous woman. She has relationships with many men in town." Upon reading this, her father becomes furious and refuses to accept Malena as his daughter. He throws her out of his house. Malena then returns to live in her own house once again. One night, Renato climbs a tree to peek through the window at Malena. He sees that Malena has a relationship with a town officer. Witnessing this deeply upsets Renato. As the officer leaves the house, a dentist attacks Malena because he likes her. At that moment, the dentist's wife arrives with the police and accuses her husband of having an affair with Malena. She files a case against Malena, and the news spreads like wildfire. People begin to claim that Malena is involved with a married man. Hearing all this, Malena becomes very distressed and approaches a prominent lawyer in town, asking him to take her case. The lawyer, seeing her vulnerability, agrees, intending to exploit her situation. During the court hearing, Malena's lawyer argues that there is no relationship between her and the dentist and that the officer is merely her friend. Malena's lawyer wins the case. Afterward, the lawyer visits Malena's home, and she pays his fee. However, since the fee is exorbitant, the lawyer takes advantage of her situation for his personal gain. Renato secretly observes this incident and, in his shock, falls from the tree, breaking one of his arms. Malena begins meeting with the lawyer regularly, as she cannot find any other work. To manage her expenses, she complies with the lawyer's demands, who covers all her costs. However, when the lawyer's mother discovers the nature of their relationship, she scolds her son, saying, "You have tarnished our family name." Ashamed, the lawyer ends his relationship with Malena. This leaves Malena completely alone. No one is willing to offer her work, and even the pension she received due to her husband is discontinued. One night, Malena cuts her hair short, thinking, "If people already think ill of me without any reason, then why not become the person they believe me to be?" The next day, Malena appears in town in a new look, stunning everyone. Instead of seeing her as a widow, people are pleased to see this new version of her. Malena sits in an empty chair and places a cigarette in her mouth to light it. Several men approach her, and one lights her cigarette with a lighter. Malena thinks, "When I wanted to live a decent life, people didn't let me. And now, everyone wants to exploit my vulnerabilities." She then begins walking down a wrong path for her own survival and to earn money, and goes to a hotel with a man. Renato stands at a distance, watching all of this, and it deeply pains him. At night, he keeps an eye on Malena's house and notices that every night some men come to visit her. However, Malena's behavior causes the wives of these men to become furious, and they start hating her even more. In the meantime, Malena becomes quite well known in the town. She also starts going out with a man named Sina. Seeing all this, Renato feels very sad. Renato wished Malena wouldn't have to do such things. He wanted to help her, but being so young, there was nothing he could do. One day, Renato sees Malena with two German officers. Unable to bear the sight, he faints. His mother and some older women believe that Renato is possessed by a spirit, so they take him to the church priest for exorcism. Meanwhile, the women of the town grow increasingly irritated with Malena because they feel she is ruining their relationships with their husbands. One day, a group of women barges into a hotel where Malena is with a man. They drag her out into the street, tear her clothes, beat her, and cut her hair to disgrace her. They humiliate her and demand that she leave the town. None of the men watching come forward to help her. What Malena endures deeply wounds her. Unable to bear more humiliation, she leaves the town. From a distance, Renato watches everything. A few days later, Malena's husband returns to the town. He is still alive, but he lost one of his arms in the war. His arrival shocks everyone in the town. He goes to his house in search of Malena, only to find that strangers have taken over the property. Their house had been destroyed during the war, and these people were now living there. Malena's husband asks people about his wife, but no one is willing to tell him anything. Even his friends start spreading false stories about Malena, claiming what she did during his absence. Hearing all this deeply hurts Malena's husband. Renato wanted to tell Malena's husband about her, but he didn't have the courage. He knew which train Malena had taken and where she had gone. So, one night, he left a letter for Malena's husband and ran away. The letter read, "She still loves you and has gone to Messina." That very night, Malena's husband took a train to find her. A year later, Malena returned to the town with her husband. As she walked through the town, the women noticed that Malena had become even more beautiful than before. However, now that she was with her husband, the women realized she was no longer a threat to them. Malena's courage amazed everyone, and they began to show her respect. When she went to the market, the women who had once attacked her now greeted her with "good morning" and addressed her as "Madam." Malena, forgetting everything, replied to them with a polite "good morning." One day, as Malena was returning home after shopping, a few oranges fell from her bag. Renato stepped forward to help her pick them up. As Malena was about to leave, Renato wished her good luck. Then, Renato rode off on his bicycle, thinking to himself, "Time is passing by. I have loved many girls when they held me close and asked, 'Will you remember me?' I would say, 'Yes, I will,' but the truth is, the only woman I have never forgotten is Malena." And with this, the movie ends. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel and don't forget to give the video a like.